I hate Thor Ragnarok.
And welcome to Porkchops, Rice, and Peaches. Pause for intro. And let's do this. Welcome to the first ever episode of Porkchops, Rice, and Peaches. My name is Noah.
And I am Richard.
And we love to talk about movies, books, video games,
Television series,
stories, characters, just a little bit of everything.
We are a homeschooling family, and I am a former high school English teacher. I was Noah's teacher for years, and when we talk about movies, books, video games, television series, we tend to bring the literary analysis that we brought to all of the novels and plays that we read while we were homeschooling.
Yeah.
The big question is, did the lessons take?
I don't know. We're about to find out.
One of the things that we like to do in our spare time is talk about the movies that we've seen, and it was during one of those conversations that Noah's mother made the suggestion that we record these and put them on a YouTube channel.
And here we are.
And it started with a conversation about Thor Ragnarok and the fact that I really dislike Thor Ragnarok. What I didn't realize about that was...
He was basically treading into some shark-infested waters
Right.
with that one.
Because I'm a dad. I run the household, I teach my children, I cart everybody to extracurricular activities, and one thing that I don't do is spend time on the internet. I don't read movie review sites, I don't pay attention to all of the discussions online.
Nope. And I do. I do. So when he said I hated Thor Ragnarok and then followed up with we should talk about this on YouTube, I had to kind of wince for a second. I knew what was coming. Or at least I think I know what was coming.
Well,
Because this movie was almost universally loved by audiences. It had a 94% on Rotten Tomatoes, which at the time I think was the highest a Marvel movie had ever gotten, or 93. It had insane ratings on Rotten Tomatoes, and it got mixed reviews from critics, so I think there was a big divide between the audience and the critics in terms of reception.
Mm-hmm.
The critics scored it a lot lower. I think they scored it around 70 or 80% on average. They were,
that doesn't surprise me.
and the audience just freaking loved it. Now, I mean, I could be wrong about that, but because that was off the top of my head, but I will verify that.
From the opening moments of the movie, I was asking myself, what's going on? What's the purpose of this? It didn't work. It didn't work for me from the opening narration, where Thor was in a cage talking to a skeleton.
Yeah.
The dramatic chain drop where he's now spinning and talking to Surtur, the big flaming monologuing evil villain who apparently can't talk to someone while they're spinning in a circle. They have to sit in frustration
And wait for him to turn all the way around.
which was as tedious for me as an audience member as it was for the creature sitting in the chair. And so so the tone for me was completely wrong. And probably because Thor and Thor the Dark World were serious stories.
Yep.
And like all of the other entries in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, there's a lot of humor in the movies, but humor isn't the main point. They're not comedies.
Yeah, they're not comedies. They're action dramas with comedic elements sprinkled in.
It's sprinkled in to lessen the tension of a scene as well as to entertain the audiences, but that's not the main point. Thor Ragnarok took that and just flipped it on its ear, and went for a complete comedy. And I felt while I was watching the movie like the actors forgot that they were making a movie. It seemed like they were having so much fun making each other laugh and making a comedy that they forgot they were telling a story, and that this was more of a slapstick entry into the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I wouldn't have objected to that if that tone was set in the first movie.
Yeah.
But you know, you're following all of these characters from their beginning storylines, you know, through to where they're at now, you don't expect those big changes.
Yeah.
Whereas Guardians of the Galaxy, established comedy.
Yeah, as itself, as the comedic branch of the Marvel Cinematic Universe in its first movie. It said, hey, we're going to be goofy, we're going to be zany, we're going to be crazy. We will take ourselves a little seriously in the storytelling department in terms of expanding the universe, but this is definitely a comedy.
Yes.
First.
And they carried that through the second movie. If the Guardians series told a serious story, seriously, without any comedy, it would bother me just as much. You know, they've established something. Let's not just turn a movie into a giant wink and a nudge, which is what they did with Dark World.
Ragnarok.
Sorry, Ragnarok.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Also, real quick, I'm going to eat my words because I just fact-checked myself. It's a 93% from the overall on the tomato meter. The audience scored it at 87%. So it looks like the critics scored it higher than the audience did, although post-movie release reviews might have set in on that one.
Okay.
So
People going back and looking at it a second time and having a change of heart.
don't know.
I went
Maybe.
back and looked at it a second time, and it sort of solidified how I feel about the
pissed you off
movie.
just as much the
just
first
as much
time?
as it did. Every movie, no matter what genre, what era, there is a suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
It's just part of storytelling and movie making. Things that happen that don't happen in normal life. And Thor Ragnarok stretched that suspension of disbelief to its breaking point for me.
Okay.
That was one of the problems. And I really took issue with Valkyrie. Thor lands on the junkyard planet.
It's your turn.
And he lands on the junkyard planet, and he meets one of the former Asgardian warriors. And she is so drunk, she is so, blasted out of her mind, that she either doesn't recognize the heir to the throne of her home world, or she doesn't care. She's that inebriated. And I would argue that if she were truly that drunk, she wouldn't be able to capture Thor to begin with. I didn't see that she served a whole heck of a lot of purpose. Just she was a vehicle to get him into the Grand Master's chamber.
Yeah.
And that was
Could have been done by anyone.
it
At
could
that
have.
Point,
Yes.
At that point.
The funniest gag in the movie was Thor receiving the Hulk treatment, and sold beautifully by Tom Hiddleston in his reaction.
So good.
Loki's
So
reaction to
good.
Thor getting, boom, 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 boom.
That's how it feels!
Right?
Yes!
And that would have been a wonderful scene and a delightful surprise if it hadn't been put in the trailers. And so the funniest scene of the movie is completely destroyed because we knew it was coming. It wasn't a matter of was it going to happen, it was a matter of when
was it going to happen?
right? One of the all-time problems of creating trailers.
Yeah.
How much do you spoil? Well, in that point, they spoiled probably the most entertaining part of the movie.
Which is and that just, it gets further compounded by the fact that we know Marvel can make good trailers because Infinity War and Endgame gave away basically nothing while hyping you up so much for the movie.
Yes.
So it's not like it's not like they can't make trailers.
So the B team
they
was
can't.
in making trailers, not the A team,
Probably.
right? Okay.
Probably focusing on Endgame, I'll be honest.
I'm not a fan of Jeff Goldblum, and this is just a personal preference. I've seen The Fly. I truly enjoyed it. I realized that.
Showing your grade.
I've earned all of this. Great. That movie predates you.
Yeah.
I enjoyed his performance in Jurassic Park. There's a lot more that I don't enjoy, and his character was smarmy and two-dimensional and uninteresting.
You gave him a whole second dimension to what I was going to give him. Okay.
He's supposed to be the Roman emperor giving the thumbs up or the thumb down to the gladiators, and he just couldn't be. I couldn't take him seriously. And another villain that I had a problem with was Hela. this two-dimensional cardboard character.
I'll give you that one.
Set her up, knock her down.
It seemed like they tried to make her three-dimensional with the motivation of, oh, my father cast me out, but it doesn't work when you're so obviously evil. That's not super good motivation because you don't show us a relationship between Hela and Odin to feel bad about her losing it in the first place.
That is correct. Yes,
it's all shown through mosaic,
right, and
instead of through her eyes. I mean, there's a bit of a flashback, but it's nothing like.
There's no emotional connection between father and daughter that gets broken down where we can truly appreciate.
There's no scene where she breaks down at Odin.
Yes.
There's no scene like where Loki gets confronted by Odin. You know,
right?
If like Loki starts like tearing up, frustrated with Odin. That's the type of thing that would have made Hela more interesting.
It's a recycled Loki story. It truly is.
Down to the green tights and magic powers, yeah.
Yes, and basically the same issue, except that they did it better with Loki. Mm-hmm. And this is not a shot at the actors portraying the characters.
Oh, no,
I think these are talented performers, and they did the best with what they were given.
Yep, this isn't even a shot at the director.
No, the director, if you want to make a comedy...
It seems like Taika Waititi is... I cannot pronounce that last name for the life of me.
Waititi?
Waititi?
Yes.
Taika Waititi? I can't
It's a stage name. I think his real name is Cohen.
Yeah. Anyway, basically, he's a good comedic director.
Excellent comedic, yes. I just wouldn't have made this movie as a comedy.
Yeah.
So we have Hela.
Source material, which we'll get into.
Uninteresting, two-dimensional villain with daddy issues. I've
never seen this before.
And then Odin, I was kind of amused at this. We find out Odin had a life before Thor. The interesting thing is, he just casually mentioned, or forgot to mention, that Thor has an older sister who's capable of destroying the universe and is probably a little bit angry.
Oh, hey, you got a big sister and that bitch crazy. Bye!
I had a life before Noah. I've told him more about that life than Odin told Thor, and I'm not the ruler of the universe.
You don't have a crazy oldest child who's going to destroy the entire world.
Exactly. And I thought, nice going, Odin. Way to set your son up for success. Ultimately, this is another entry in the MCU where the good guy wins and the bad guy loses. Thor wins. Valkyrie gets her A coin for sobriety, and I'm sitting there asking the question, what was Hulk's purpose in this? And what really was the purpose of the movie in telling and advancing the Marvel Cinematic Universe?
Well, I can kind of fill that part of the... I can answer that question for you, basically. So, remembering the landscape back in 2017 of the MCU, you had this weird period. So, as a lot of people probably know, the MCU is divided into 3 phases. You had Phase 1, which was everything up to Avengers, and I think it includes Iron Man 3. The Phase 2 is generally considered the sequels that came after Avengers, leading into Age of Ultron, up through Civil War. Phase 3 is everything that leads up to Infinity War and Endgame, and technically it ends with Spider-Man Far From Home. This fell into Phase 3 in that weird in-between period between Civil War and Infinity War. So all the movies that came in between those two needed to connect the dots between and show the status quo and where everyone is. Ant-Man and the Wasp has to establish where Ant-Man is in Infinity War because he doesn't show up for the entirety of it. And Hulk and Thor were both absent from the last big crossover movie, which was Captain America: Civil War, for obvious reasons. If they were on a side, they would just take out everybody. They're just so powerful, so they had to eliminate. So the porpoise.
The porpoise.
The purpose of this movie is really to show where these two ended up, because the last time you see him is in Age of Ultron. Thor takes off after...
I forgot it's your turn.
Oh, yeah. Thor takes off because, he has to deal with Asgard problems, and Hulk, the last time you see him, he's flying off in the Quinjet, which comes back, which, by the way, I think my favorite part of Thor Ragnarok is the, welcome, Thor, please state passcode. Strongest Avenger. Not accepted. Damn it, Stark. Point Break. It's like, that was a great callback to Avengers. One of the jokes that really landed with me. But back to the landscape of the scene. They needed to tell where these two went, essentially. And they also probably wanted to eliminate a lot of the powerhouses that the realm of Asgard brings to the table, because then the question in Infinity War becomes, well, why aren't we using Asgard? You've got all these powerhouses. It's like in the Justice League, if they had, if Wonder Woman's an Amazon, why not bring in the Amazon? Why not bring in all the or Green Lantern's even better. There's an entire army of the dudes like him. Why don't you ever bring these guys in? So part of it might be to establish, okay, this is where Asgard went. This is why they can't show up and just clear house for us.
Okay.
Right. I think there's multiple layers to it. The thing, honestly, because I walked into this movie, and this was my reaction, because I can do this. You can't. I can do this. I could sit in the chair, watch the first few minutes of a movie, and go, oh, this is how it's going to be. Consume the product. Pretty colors. I realized very early in this movie what it was, and it didn't bother me as much as you did initially. It still bothers me a little bit, right, but nowhere near the extent that this movie pissed you off.
Yeah, this one did. This one did.
The more I looked at it afterwards, the more angry I got because of the material they were drawing from. You use the term Ragnarok, and you're thinking apocalypse. All right, you're thinking end of the world.
Oh, it was for Asgard.
I mean, yes, but you'd think it would take itself a little more seriously because it's talking about the end of the world.
Yes.
But the other thing is that this movie draws so much from the Planet Hulk storyline. The Planet Hulk into the World War Hulk storyline, which is one of the most brutal storylines in comics. The purpose, in a quick summary, is that Planet Hulk happens when the heroes think that Hulk is too much of a liability. So Iron Man, Reed Richards, Doctor Strange, Professor X, they're a group called the Illuminati, and they vote to ship Hulk off planet. So they load him into a shuttle, and they send him off-world, and Hulk's mad. And he lands on Sakaar, which is the setting of the movie.
Okay.
There is a tyrannical dictator who keeps the people entertained through gladiatorial combat, but he doesn't look like Jeff Goldblum, and he doesn't joke around. He puts them in fights to the death.
Okay.
And Hulk joins with a group of other gladiators. He fights, he kicks the Silver Surfer's ass.
Oh, that would have been fun to see.
Wouldn't it?
That would have been great.
Just absolutely beats the crap out of the Silver Surfer. Oh, granted, was a little powered down because Silver Surfer is a galaxy-wide level threat in terms of power, but it would have been so cool to see. He frees the world, essentially, or this country on the planet Sakaar, takes over, becomes the new king, gets a wife. She becomes pregnant with his kid Scar, and then the shuttle blows up. The shuttle he arrived on goes nuclear, blows up, destroys the entire country. Basically, it's him and a few of his followers left.
No wife, no son?
The wife dies.
Wow.
Son technically survives, but that's complicated comic gobbledygook. Anyway, Hulk goes on a freaking revenge tear back on Earth. Like, flies back,
right,
and ascends to a level known as World Breaker Hulk. And if that doesn't tell you how pissed off this guy was, I don't know what will. This dude took a step and nearly sank the island of Manhattan. A step. So and this is what Ragnarok was kind of basing off of. They were like, oh, we're going to pull elements from Planet Hulk. You know, and it's like, Planet Hulk is one of the most brutal comic series I've ever read.
And
it's not the most.
And they played it for comedy.
And they played it for comedy. You know, they played a lot of it for comedy. And
what you're sharing,
there's a meme that I'm going to show you. And
okay.
We're gonna flash it on screen that basically sums up the attitude this movie took. I'll show you afterwards, but here it is for you. Hopefully you guys laugh at that.
Hopefully I will.
Hopefully you will too. But this from a source material standpoint and where it falls in the series, I don't think it needed to be this comedic. Yeah, you could argue that they needed levity in between Civil War and Infinity War, which are very serious movies, but you have Ant-Man and the Wasp, and I know people don't go watch that as much, but you had Spider-Man, Homecoming.
Right.
Black Panther wasn't as serious. It was serious, but it wasn't like as serious as Civil War or Infinity War. So, I mean, you had movies to give levity. You didn't need to make Thor a comedy.
And Ant-Man, like Guardians, established comedy early
and Guardians
on.
of the 2 came out during that time, too. So, I mean, again, you had comedy.
One of the things that's obvious, I am not in the demographic audience that Marvel is shooting for. Number one,
yeah, no.
you are, and also it's very clear that the way we watch movies has changed, which is something that you and I have talked about just a little bit.
And something that we will talk later on this channel. So subscribe if you want to hear that conversation.
It's going to be a good one. But I hadn't even thought of that until you brought it up during one of our conversations, and it sort of violates the old standard for making sequels, where you had to have a standalone movie with a beginning, a middle, and an end. You're right. The characters have to develop and advance. They can't remain stagnant through the movie. In a certain way, they did with Ragnarok, but there's a little bit of repetition. Thor got beaten down in the first movie.
Yep.
Thor was the arrogant ruler who lost his place. He was exiled. He had to learn his lesson and come back.
Yep.
Second movie, Thor's pursuing his love interest. He's learned the lesson of sacrifice for his kingdom to the point that he gives up the love of his life and then regains her.
Yep.
But they needed to repeat that
verse
again. Yeah. And then, of course, we find out that they repeat it even more later on when we get Fat Thor, pot-bellied Thor, with the absolutely wonderful line from his mother, "Eat a salad."
Best thing to come out of Fat Thor.
Yeah, it was. It was the only good thing to come out of Fat Thor.
He plays Fortnite!
And yells at 12-year-olds and threatens to destroy them.
That's just gamer talk, though.
Yeah, this repetition of this beatdown Thor storyline is old. It's not interesting. It's not believable.
There's ways of doing it in new, instead of just like, depowering him or lowering his power level or having him start from scratch again. You don't need to do that. There's ways, because the comics have been doing this for decades of finding ways to break Thor down and have him start again through failure, not through losing his powers, or him choosing to give up his powers as penance or something. Because the term Ragnarok, honestly, I think this movie should have started with Asgard getting destroyed. Honestly, because that would have been the story arc if you wanted to break Thor down again, back to the beginning, without depowering him, taking him away, starting from scratch. Have him flat out fail. Not because of his own pride, not because of his own arrogance, not because of anything like that.
Because he got beat.
Have him get beat. Because the big thing because the other thing, in talking about this, the story is changing. The way we tell stories through a movie is changing, but sneak peek. Thor's story doesn't just take place in the Thor movies. It takes place through the Avengers and Avengers Age of Ultron.
Yes.
And in those movies, those do a decent job of establishing that he's a team player. He's very much a team player, and he seems to do better when he's got people who can, he's a bullet. Put him in a gun, point him in a direction, and say, bang, go over there. He's a powerhouse.
Yes.
He's smart, but he's not Captain America levels of strategist. So tell him who to fight, how to fight, when to fight, and he'll get it done. But when he's left to his own devices, he fails. I think it would have been awesome to start the movie with him failing to save Asgard and trying to find a way of getting the people off-world.
So the focus of the movie being save the people.
Save the people.
Save the remnants of his world.
Save it, and then the story beat of home isn't a place, it's where you make it with the people you make it with, probably would have worked a whole lot better. That's my 2 cents, though. I'm not a professional script writer.
No, we're just two people who watch movies, talk about them, and we will talk about movies that we like.
Yes, this is, and again, this isn't. I didn't personally hate this movie. I thought it was just kind of a meh entry into an overall pretty great cinematic universe.
I finished the movie and thought, there's 2 hours of my life I'll never get back.
And you rewatched it and thought, wow, 4 hours total.
Yeah. I'm a glutton for punishment. I wanted to give the movie. I truly wanted to like the movie. I wanted to give it a second chance. I wanted to see if on a second viewing I would reconsider my positions. Odin asking Thor the question: Are you the hammer, or are you?
Are you the god of hammers, or are you the god of thunder? I thought that was a good line.
It was a good line.
A lot better in a non-comedy.
And
it has good material in this movie.
Glowing eye Thor is kind of cool, actually.
I wanted to see more of that. Endgame, why didn't you bring that back? Or sorry, Infinity War, why didn't they bring that back? Because they brought it back in Endgame, and it was awesome.
Yes, it was.
Oh my gosh, seeing Thor. I'm a sucker for glowing eyes.
So
in anything.
This is Porkchops, Rice, and Peaches.
Thank you so much for watching our first episode, and if you liked this, then feel free to tell us that you liked us down below. If you hated our opinions, then go ahead and tell us
that too.
Yeah, we don't care.
Right?
Controversy is good for the algorithm, apparently. I've been told.
I will say this. We will be as kind as we possibly can be to the actors, to the directors, to the writers.
Again, nothing against them. They did a fantastic job with what they were given.
So if you disagree with us, be kind in your comments too. This can be a place for fun, healthy discussion, but
we love discussion with each other, and we'd love to include you on that too.
So hit the subscribe button if you like us.
Yep, we're going to shamelessly show at the end of every episode, because that's apparently what you have to do on YouTube.
I guess. So I've been told.
All right. Thank you again so much for watching, and have a wonderful rest of your day. You're going to say bye?
Bye.
Cut!